Metal Jesus, I'm back again, and I'm really excited to do this video because I've been wanting to do it for a while, and that is do a review of Xenogears for the PlayStation 1. Now, if you ask a lot of people who had the PlayStation 1 back in the day, and you ask them what their favorite role-playing game is, a lot of them will say Xenogears. As a matter of fact, a lot of gamers, when you ask them what their favorite game is of all time, will say Xenogears. And so I really wanted to do a good job on this video. The thing is that I didn't own a PlayStation back in the day. I'm playing this game brand new. And despite all its greatness, there are some faults with it. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is that if you are coming to watch this video and getting sort of validation that this is the best game ever made, I want you to have an open mind and look at it fairly. But that said, the term epic gets thrown around an awful lot these days. You know, epic win, epic fail. Well, the truth is this game is epic. I mean that. This game is crazy epic. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I think it's going to be really fun. Let's take a look. Xenogears was released for the original PlayStation 1 by Square back in 1998. And it's considered to be a science fiction role-playing game. And it was a huge success, both critically and financially. It actually sold over 1.2 million copies, as well as being released on the PlayStation Store as a download for the PlayStation 3 and the PSP. Now, this game was produced by the same guy who also made Secret of Mana, as well as my personal favorite, Chrono Cross, and more recently, Final Fantasy III on the DS. I mentioned in the intro that the story in Xenogears is epic, and man is it. Technically, the game is the fifth part of a six-part story detailed in the Japanese book Xenogears Perfect Works. To give you an idea how much backstory is in this game before you ever pick up that controller, I'm going to show you a fan's outline of the plot of Xenogears. Notice there are no details or dialogue in here. It's just lines and lines of story details leading up to the beginning of the game. You play as a young boy, Fei Fong Wong, I love that name, who has been reincarnated 4 previous times throughout history. Yet as you take control, now lives in a small village and suffers from amnesia. I know, it's typical. However, at the beginning of the game, Fei's simple life is interrupted by an attack from an army right during a friend's wedding is just about to take place. Fei, in a fit of rage, takes control of a giant robot, or gears as they're called in this game, and begins to wipe out the attackers and destroys most of the village and his friends and family in the process. How does Fei know how to control the gear? Where did he really come from, and why are these people attacking the village? These are the questions that Fei must answer as he leaves on his adventure. It starts fairly typical and cliched, but both the story and the 9 playable characters quickly become way more complicated and more evolved than you could ever imagine. Several world religions are represented in this game, including Christianity and also reincarnation from Hindu, as well as principles and philosophies from Nietzsche, Freud, and Carl Jung. You know, concepts like the id, the ego, and the superego, as well as the different faces of what humans call God, all play a significant role in understanding the complicated plot of Xenogears. It's pretty wild stuff. Now, I've just barely touched on the plot of this game, and you know what? That's on purpose because I want people to experience this for themselves. And it's open to interpretation. I mean, this is a crazy epic story. It includes reincarnation, and characters have multiple personalities. The game takes place on land, sea, and air. Also in space, there's multiple dimensions and more. I mean, it's nutty, right? It actually has something for any fan of fantasy and sci-fi. In addition to the plot, the combat in this game is actually really cool too. There are actually 2 combat styles in this game. There's the martial arts style combat, and then there's also the large robot or gears combat is what they call it. The martial arts combat, you control a human character in turn-based combat with large combos. It's almost like a fighting game. The game uses the tried and true active time battle system, and it's similar to maybe Chrono Trigger or a lot of the older Final Fantasy games. There are 3 types of attack mapped to the controller buttons, and each one is more powerful, yet uses more or less action points or fuel depending on whether you're in a gear or not. There's also special death blow combinations and are learned through repetition of combat. They are chained together for even more damage, and you can ultimately, towards the end of the game, save up 28 action points, leading to multiple death blows and even a hyper mode, which is like ultra powerful, really low fuel death blows. Now, the Gears combat is really similar to the martial arts style, except for, at least initially, the Gears combat seems to be more stats or ability based on the equipment and the upgrades that you apply to your gear, as well as you really have to manage the fuel. I mean, to give you an idea here, in the first half of the game, you don't even really have the ability to quote-unquote heal your gear during combat. So you need to really use your fuel wisely. You know, I would almost go so far to say that grinding in this game is actually a lot of fun, because you're always learning more death blows, and there's so much variety in it. You never really get too tired of it. It's quite amazing, actually. As you've been watching this review, you may have noticed how impressive most of these graphics are for the PlayStation 1. It's kind of a mix of 3D polygon backgrounds and with sometimes low-resolution 2D sprites for the characters. It's kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes it's really impressive and detailed, and other times when the camera is up close on a character, man, it is just ugly and blocky. It's kind of unfortunate, but I really do feel like this game pushes the PlayStation 1 maybe further than almost any game I've ever played. I mean, there's a very impressive amount of variety in these environments. I mean, it must have just taken ages to create this game. Now, in addition to the in-game graphics, there's also traditional hand-drawn anime and pre-rendered CGI clips, and these were created by the company Production IG, which is a world-famous Japanese production company. I mean, they made some of my favorite anime movies, including Ghost in the Shell, Patlabor, and then also Blood the Last Vampire. So overall, I think this game is incredibly impressive for a PlayStation 1 game, but man, when those 2D sprites are up close, it's not pretty at all. Now, I would definitely be amiss if I didn't mention the incredible soundtrack in this game. You know, when you play a classic role-playing game for 40, 50, 60 hours, whatever it is to complete this game, and you listen to the same soundtrack over and over, well, if it sucks, it just adds to the misery. But thankfully, this game is composed by the same guy who did Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, Shadow Hearts, and also Xenoblade. I mean, it's just an amazing soundtrack. I absolutely loved it from beginning to end. It's excellent. You know, overall, I really enjoyed Xenogears. It was incredibly fun and really deep combat system. I mean, there's 2 combat systems. You could play through this game multiple times and never really get tired of the combat. It's a really interesting and complex science fiction story. I'm a huge science fiction buff, and man, I'll tell you what, I mean, this has got a great story. It also has believable and real characters, both good and bad ones too. So that's always the key for a great story, is not just that the hero is interesting, but also the, villains. And man, this game is epic to the extreme. I mean, just what more can I say without giving away the plot? But it's, for those who have finished this game, you know just how epic this game is. Fantastic design and detail. It just must have taken a ton of work to create this game. There's so many environments and areas to explore and cutscenes. It's incredible. But there are some cons too. In my opinion, I think the game is just slightly too difficult, even by retro gaming standards. To give you an idea, I actually told several of my good friends that I was going to be reviewing this game, and the number one response that I got was, this game is awesome, it's really hard. And that's a very true statement. It's a pretty difficult game. And it doesn't help that there's just an awful lot of grinding to do in this game, which kind of artificially makes the game a little longer. And so that's not one of my favorite things to do, but at least the combat's fun. I also thought that the boss battles were a little unfair and maybe chained together. And what I mean by that is that often you would go into a boss battle and perhaps you would barely win, only to find out that there is another boss battle immediately after that with no save. And maybe you would, barely win that one, only to find out that there's another boss battle right after that without the ability to save. So a couple sections in the game are like that, and it's pretty tough to deal with that. I kind of played this game almost with the strategy guide, in my right hand while I was playing this game sometimes, because it was just brutally difficult in the boss battles. Also, there is lots and lots and lots of dialogue, especially in the second disc. And I think it's because I've read on the internet that technically they ran out of time and this game had to be released no matter what. And so it was originally supposed to be a 4 CD game and they had to cut it down to 2. And in order for the complex plot to make any sense, they basically just crammed it all into the second disc, and you sit there and you're just going through dialogue. Not exactly the greatest thing in the world, but it is what it is. And certainly the first disc makes up for that. Also, I think it's fair to say that the plot was a little too long-winded and convoluted. And again, that's probably because they had to shorten the game down. It really should have been 2 games. So that's my review of the classic PlayStation 1 role-playing game Xenogears. But you know what? The story doesn't stop there. Actually, the producer left Square and ended up creating the spiritual successor to the game called Xenosaga. You may have heard of this game on the PlayStation 2. There's actually 3 of them. Now, what's really cool about this is that they're very similar in style to Xenogears. And he has a lot of the same philosophies and the ideas that he put in that game, but just was able to expand upon them in these great games here. I've actually played all 3 and really like them a lot. And what's great is that each game is anywhere from 60 to 80 hours of gameplay. There's just a ton of stuff to explore in these. So, all right, well, I want to thank you for watching my channel and thank you for subscribing. Take care.